globally in terms of sustainability platforms. Carla Bergstrom with the Alberta Canola Producers is going to provide us with some background on how our croppers are moving forward in this direction. And then Jean-Michel from Groupe Ageco will share with us the online tool that is being developed right now to help farmers determine their readiness to use some of the platforms that exist. The tool is presently in our in a pilot stage, and it's going to be undergoing some review with some farmers. So today I'd also like to welcome those producers that are helping out with the pilot on that tool. They are also on the webinar with us today. They will be listening to the presentation along with the rest of you folks and participating in the question and answer. Once the questions are finished, we just ask that all our regular participants leave the webinar, and the farmers will remain on the line and work with Jean and Carla on the pilot phase of it. So as before, the questions that you may have as the presentation is going on can be entered in the chat box on your screen, and I will ask the questions during the question period after the presentations are done. If you have any technical issues, you can just send a message in the chat box to Scott, and he can help you with that. So I now am going to hand it over to Carla, who is going to provide us with some of that background to the tool. Carla, it's all yours.
Okay. Hello, everyone. We're really happy that you're able to join us today to hear about our new website that we will be launching very soon. My name is Carla Bergstrom, and I am the Manager of Government and Industry Affairs at Alberta Canola. I helped form the Alberta Farm Sustainability Working Group since its inception, so I'm going to give you a little bit of a brief background about our project, and then I'll hand the webinar over to Jean-Michel Couture with Groupe Ageco to walk you through the tool. So as Karen mentioned, we do have a lot of ground to cover, so we'll just ask that you save your questions until the end of the presentation. And you can use the chat feature, and we can record those questions to answer those at the end as well. So, as supply chains and multinationals continue to expand globally, seeking lower costs and greater production capacity, they are exposed to a widening array of risks. And this is especially so when those companies are expanding into developing countries. And some of these risks our farmers can relate to, like supply disruption, cost volatility, compliance with local laws and regulations, and even brand reputation. So companies like Walmart, General Mills, McDonald's, they're looking to source sustainable ingredients to meet the growing expectations from their stakeholders to be more responsible for their suppliers' social, ethical, and environmental practices. So sustainability was just coming onto our radar back in about 2015, and the 4 cropping commissions, Alberta Wheat and Barley, Alberta Canola, and Alberta Pulse, collaborated on a pilot project that looked at sustainability certification on grain farms. And from that pilot, we learned that a lot of Alberta farmers are using beneficial management practices on their farms, and that agriculture has a lot of really great stories to tell. But we needed to be more proactive to help our farmers provide that proof in a way that wasn't so onerous on themselves and the reporting. So we continued to work together, and we formed this Alberta Farm Sustainability Extension Working Group with the 4 commissions and the staff from Alberta Agriculture and Forestry. And that brings us to today's webinar about the tool that we've created, the Farm Sustainability Readiness Tool. Now, Groupe Ageco has been contracted by our working group for this project, and this project focuses on increasing farmers' readiness to supply those sustainable ingredients. FarmSustainability.ca, which will launch very soon, is a sustainability hub for Canada's cropping sector. The website intends to provide a lot of information about what sustainability is, and it'll address some of those drivers behind sustainability sourcing and sustainability certification, because there's a lot of questions. We're not getting those signals from the marketplace, but they are coming, and so this is to help address some of that and get our producers ready. So the tool itself is an online self-assessment, and it was created from a hybrid checklist of 3 international sustainability standards. The first one was the International Sustainability and Carbon Certification Plus, ISCC Plus. The second is the Sustainable Agriculture Initiative, or SAI, and that's a farmer self-assessment. And then the third one is Unilever's Sustainable Agriculture Code. So what we've done on the website is we've made those international sustainability platforms really farmer friendly. We've tried to make it easier to understand what sustainability standards are requiring from a compliance standpoint. So when our tool reaches a critical mass of users, then the tool can also make it easier for these farmers to understand how they compare to the industry averages. So just to wrap up the introduction, this is a voluntary self-assessment for farmers who are open to learning more about their operations and who are considering a sustainability certification program for their farms. So I'll turn it over now to Jean-Michel with Groupe Ageco, and he'll walk you through the website. So thank you.
So thank you, Carla, for the introduction. Hello, everyone, and thank you for being there for this presentation. I'm really excited to be able to present you today on behalf of the AFAC this staging version of the Farm Sustainability Readiness Tool. As it was just mentioned, this tool is just about to be released formally at the end of the month. And this version you see right now on your screen is actually the version in staging version. So it's the one that farmers, and some of you are being on the call right now, will have the opportunity to review over the next few days in order to identify any potential improvements and ways to promote its diffusion among other farmers in Alberta and across the country in the coming months. So Carla did provided a great overview of the platform, its origin, and why it has been designed and developed. So Groupe Ageco and myself, we had the opportunity to work with AFAC over the last few months in developing this tool, both from a content and design perspective. So I'm going to take a few minutes, maybe 20 minutes, to walk through the platform and show you the main functionalities and how it works. The farmers participating in the pilot will have the opportunity to go deeper in the tool and make sure that they have the ability to actually access all the resources and questionnaires and have access to all the functionalities. And any other users will have the same opportunity once the tool is released early in March. So as you can see right now on the homepage, so the tool is meant to be really straightforward. The idea is to provide users, especially farmers, the ability to have access to basic information in terms of regarding sustainability. Not only, so the tool itself is built on 2 main pillars or 2 main paths. The first one gives the opportunity to users to assess their sustainability performance based on a set of questions and indicators themselves based on the 3 sustainability programs Carla just mentioned. The other function is to access information regarding sustainability in regards to the specific indicators and topics addressed in this tool. Most of those functionalities and content is freely available to anyone going online once the tool will be made available in March. However, as soon as a user will be interested in inputting information and accessing the self-assessment section of the platform, there will be a need to log in, and then users will have access to their own access and would access actually to the content and their own profile. So anyone going online, once the tool will be released, will get on this homepage right now, as you see. As you can see, the 2 main features, the 2 main components of the platform are presented up front, so the Assess and Access buttons. The tool is interactive, and it's created as a way we tried to make sure that the user, whether he accesses or she accesses one part of the tool, can access other sections and try to create loops for the tool to be as flexible and interactive as possible for the users. As I mentioned, the first section, assess my performance, will bring users to the three main components of the platform. The other section, the access, will lead to the resource library itself, and I'll talk about that in a moment. As I mentioned a moment ago, to access the self-assessment section, you have to log in. So a user will be invited to go on the login section, and of course, input their email address, which is the basic information needed to access the platform, and a password. Of course, I created my own account, but anyone who will be interested in logging in would have to create an account. At that point, what we did is to provide to ask for a minimum of information from users, so nothing too personal from anyone. So what we ask users is, of course, an email address to be able to access the tool and to communicate with users, or actually just to recover an email, a password, if in case the user has lost it. Email, first name, last name, as well as the occupation of the person, the participant, or the person of the user. So basic the user will have access to the opportunity to select what is their main occupation: farmer, farm manager, farm advisor, or other, in which case there is also the possibility to specify what kind of occupation. The reason is, of course, the targeted audience is mostly farmers and their advisors and collaborators, but we also think that other interested parties might be interested in using the platform, people from the academia, or potentially from the government or others. We also ask basic information such as where the person is located, and if you are located in Alberta, in which region of Alberta you're located. The information is just for analytics purposes, so just to understand who is actually using the platform. In case you're a farmer, we'll also ask users to identify what are the agricultural commodities being grown or raised on the farm, and a user will have the opportunity to select as many commodities as they want. And again, the reason for that is just to better understand the profile of users for analytics purposes at the end, once we reach a critical amount of users. Users will also be asked to create a password, and from there read accept the terms of use, which summarizes how the information will be used and in respect to national legislation. So once you create all the information, you can actually sign up, or in which case, in my case, we have already an account created, so I can log in. Once you log in, you realize that on the sidebar, you have more functionalities being made available. So as you see, the resource library is available to anyone. The questionnaire, scorecard, and action plan are, however, only available for users who are logged in. The reason is, as I mentioned, is that users who are logged in will have the opportunity to input information, and therefore create their own account, their own profile, in which case this is why we need to log in to do so. Maybe one of the main features of the platform is the self-assessment section. So I will start by looking in more detail into that specific section. So there is always a possibility to click here and to access to the information, but as mentioned, I'll use both ways. But as you can see, there is always a sidebar menu on your left, and this sidebar menu will be there in any section of the platform on the tool, and give users the opportunity to jump or to go from one section to the next. So the tool is not developed in a linear way. It's actually it's being designed to make sure that someone can actually jump from one section to the next, depending on their interest, what they want to do or look for. So once you click on the assets section, so as it has been mentioned at the beginning, so we summarize on this platform 3 main sustainability programs. Together, these 3 programs account for 400 requirements or metrics, which is, as you can imagine, pretty lengthy to complete for an individual, for a farmer or anyone who is interested in looking into what are the requirements and looking into what they should do in order to comply with a specific program. So what we did in this for this tool is that we looked at those 400 requirements and we benchmarked them together, and we tried to identify what are the patterns, similarities, overlaps. And we summarize all those 400 requirements into 84 questions or 84 indicators. These 84 indicators are addressing 3 main dimensions of sustainability, going from economic viability, social responsibility, and environmental sustainability. So even though we already summarized 400 requirements into one single questionnaire, including 84 questions, we subdivided this questionnaire into 3 sections addressing those 3 pillars of sustainability. By doing that, we tried to make it easier for anyone going online to start with one section and then to move later on with the other sections without having to complete right away 84 questions, even though, as you'll see, all those questions are practice-based with yes, no, and checklist format to answer, which is actually one of the objectives, to make them easy to answer and pretty straightforward to complete. So as you go on all of those 3 pillars, then you can understand a bit more what is economic viability. In this case here, we're talking about business management and economic viability, for instance. Social responsibility are indicators and questions addressing issues such as working conditions and community relations on the farm. And finally, environmental sustainability, of course, is all about environmental practices on the farm as well. So once you click on one section, you can start your assessment. So, and as you can see, once you click there on the sidebar menu on the left, you are actually moved from the home page to the questionnaire section. And there again, you have a sub-menu where you know where you stand in terms of where in the questionnaire you are actually, where you are in the specific questionnaire. Like we mentioned at the beginning, the questions has been designed in a really straightforward way, where a user can actually have access to a straightforward question that has been interpreted or translated into a specific crop production and Albertan context. In this case, we're talking about the economic viability questionnaire. So we're talking about business management and economic viability indicators. A user will have access to a progress bar to understand how many questions they have to answer and how many are left to answer. And underneath there, just below, there is the question itself. As I mentioned, so the tool doesn't include any quantitative information. It's all about qualitative, practice-based questions and indicators. The first question here is, which of the following services do you regularly rely on to ensure legal compliance of your activities and to identify changes in legislation? So check all that apply. As you can see in this specific section, I already completed this questionnaire. So I can actually edit my answers by clicking there, and just to make sure that the practices listed there are those that are related to what I'm actually doing on my farm. On each page, there's also more information for interested users. In this case here, there's a tips and advice. So someone clicking there can actually access more information on why does it matter? Why is this question relevant, for instance? Or why should a user who is interested in complying with the programs which are the foundation of those questions and framework should do actually or have in mind? So in this case, it's just a reminder that anyone actually should stay current with respect to changes in specific laws and legislation. So this is a tip and advice for anyone who is interested to know more, get more information about such practices. So as you can see here, once you complete the questionnaire, you can move to the next question. And the progress bar is evolving, and then you can complete and move through the questionnaire like this. As you complete more questions, you move down the road there on the sidebar. So once a section is completed, you can actually move back to the previous questions if you want to edit anything. And as you move down the road, once you completed the questionnaire, you can actually move forward. However, if you haven't completed the whole questionnaire, you won't be able to skip any sections to move forward. The reason is that we ask users to complete all the questions, answer all the questions of each questionnaire to gather all the information needed to measure the performance and then to develop the action plan. So as you move down there, you have access to all the information. And at the very end, once all the questions are answered, then users will have the opportunity to go to the results page. Once you go to the results page, as you can see here again, you're moving from the questionnaire section to the scorecard section. The scorecard gives user an overview of their performance based on the information they provided so far by answering and completing the questionnaires. Here, the top section there provides the overview of the performance. So in this case, you have the overall performance, again, based on the information you provided. And this overall performance is based on the scores, of the questionnaire. It's not in regards to the specific sustainability programs that are the basis of this tool, but just based on the 84 questions or just about the 20 questions you answered, this is the overall performance. You have also the progress bar. In this case, I've completed just one questionnaire, so only 15% of the complete of all the questions have been answered. And the last section on the right is the program-specific performance, where a user can have an overview, a high-level overview of, based on their answers, how far they are of complying with those different sustainability programs we mentioned. Of course, all the specific programs have their own scoring system, and this tool is not meant to replace any of those programs. So it's not because you completed all 3 questionnaires, and even though you get 100% in terms of performance, and you reach, let's say, 100% against FSA or ISCC, it is not. This information cannot be used to say, I comply with that particular program, but it does provide a good sense of how far or how complicated it would be for a user, let's say, to move from this information recorded in this questionnaire to comply with this specific program's requirement. But we'll see later on in the research library section how this information is actually related. When we move down this page here, we see that we have also the information for each of the 3 dimensions we talked about earlier. So the economic viability, social responsibility, and environmental sustainability section. Here again, so since I completed one questionnaire, which is the economic viability one, so I get the result for that specific question, for this specific section. So in this case, I've completed 100% of the questionnaire, and my overall score, based on the answer that I gave, is 60%. So on the right here, users will have access to the detailed results. So all the questions have been clustered under criteria. So in this specific dimension, we have 4 criteria: legality and integrity, financial viability, operations, and product safety and quality. If I click on any of them, then I see the indicators I'm complying with or not. So in this case, we have 3 indicators related to legality and integrity, and only I'm complying based on the information I provided, only to the first one, awareness of laws. The 2 others, based on the answer I gave, it seems that I'm not likely complying with that requirement. The same information is available for all other criteria, and we have the same information in terms of compliance. The percentage is, of course, only indicative. The idea is to show, to drill down to the indicator and be able to understand what potentially I should do to comply with those indicators, and therefore to the requirements of the corresponding sustainability programs, as we'll see in a moment. So here the 75% is because I'm complying with 3 indicators and not, so it's 3 out of 4, 75%. So this is how actually this section works. Since I've completed only one questionnaire, as you can see here, the social responsibility and environmental sustainability sections are not yet available, so I need to start the questionnaire. So by clicking here, as you can imagine, I'm going back to the questionnaire section, to the corresponding section over there. So this is how the scorecard actually works. Once you click on the print button, you will print the section with all the subsection being extended. The idea there is to provide users the opportunity to print, or it could also be a PDF. Actually, it will create a PDF and give the opportunity for users to use that PDF to engage a discussion with the advisor, the partners, or anyone who is interested in knowing about what is going on the farm and what should be done potentially to move forward in terms of sustainability. So once the scorecard, once the first question has been completed and the scorecard has been reviewed, the next step is to actually look at the action plan. Once you click on the action plan section, you can actually access the practices that are recommended based on the answer provided in the questionnaire in order to bridge the gap or to comply with the underlying requirements from the sustainability programs. So how the action plan actually works, all the information is recorded under each of the 3 dimensions. So here again, I've completed the section for the economic viability. So this is why I see here actions being recommended based on this particular pillar. So the information provided here is actually really straightforward. It's a recommended best management, beneficial management practice. In this case, since I'm not complying with this particular indicator, which is complying with laws, therefore, the indicator here provided is follow appropriate procedures to ensure that your activities are compliant with national and local laws and regulations. So this is the practice we recommend based on the information we provided, you provided, to say, well, this is something you should do. And we also provide information in terms of the related sustainability programs that are justifying this action on your farm. So why this BMP and why the corresponding indicator is because they are 3 sustainability programs that are actually requiring farmers to do something in this line. So there will be a beneficial management practice recommended for each of the indicators that are not likely comply, for which users are not likely complying. So as you can see there. And for the sections for which, again, the questionnaire hasn't been completed, then users will be asked to complete the questionnaire in order to get access to the similar information. As I mentioned earlier, there's also an opportunity to print this section and to use this document as well as a roadmap in order to move forward in terms of sustainability. So this is one way of using the tool, the more interactive way, I should say. So by completing a questionnaire, accessing the scorecard, and then being able to develop an action plan, which is in line with the information provided. The other section of the platform is related to the learning module, and as you maybe seen in this section in the previous one, the learning module is always there, available for users to click on and to access information, context information in regards to the indicators or the beneficial management practices that are recommended in the action plan. Without getting there, one way of getting there is actually to go back to the home page and to access the resource library section. By clicking there, then you access the resource library, let's say table of content, where a user will have access to different fact sheets addressing the different topics covered in this tool. So you still have the three dimensions of sustainability, going from economic viability, social responsibility, and environmental sustainability. And underneath, you have the same criteria or topics that you've seen in the scorecard section. By clicking on any of those criteria or topics, you will access a specific fact sheet with information related to that particular topic. So for instance, if I click on labor relations, I will move to the resource library section on this particular fact sheet on labor relations. Here again, as you can see, there's also there's still the sidebar menu where any users can click on and actually move from one section to the next without having to read through in a linear way one fact sheet to the next. Depending on what you're interested in, you can actually move from one page to the next as you wish. Each fact sheet is designed the same way. So you have the title, of course, and there is some background information about why this information is actually important. On the afterwards, you have all the relevant indicators related to that particular topic. So these are the same indicators you find in the questionnaires and in the scorecard. So this is where you have a summary of all the information on which the questionnaire and scorecard and action plan are actually based. So when you click on any of those boxes there's the information is being made available. So when you click, you first have general information on the recommended beneficial management practice that you find in your action plan if you're not likely complying with this particular indicator. You also have information on the tip and advice, and potentially for some indicators, there's also information in terms of the types of regulation in place at the federal or provincial level addressing that particular topic. A user will also have an information on whether this indicator is addressed by the Alberta EFP. So someone who has an EFP implemented on their farm will be able to know whether this information is actually something they might already they may be already addressing through their EFP, or something they might already have documented elsewhere through their EFP. Something important for a user who is actually interested in not only completing this questionnaire, but also to in complying with one of those particular or specific sustainability programs on which this tool is based, is actually the related sustainability metrics you see here in the second tab of each of those boxes. Here you have the actual requirements listed in the three sustainability programs that have been clustered together to justify, or actually to based on which all the indicators, questions, and the overall framework of that tool have been designed. So an interested user who is actually interested in complying with FSA, for instance, will find it useful to go there to the business management, depending if this is an indicator you should comply with, and read through the specific requirement he or she will have to comply with if the person is interested in complying with that particular program. So the idea of this section is to make sure that all the relevant information is available in a transparent way for different users, depending on what are their needs. It might be just to assess their performance and look at the beneficial management practices. It could be to design an action plan, to benchmark the performance over time potentially, or in the case of moving towards certification, to read through those requirements there list there in this resource library section. Another useful feature of the resource library is actually the list of available resources. So for each of those fact sheet, there are 19 of them. They are resources being made available, which are all clickable link to mostly governmental websites on related topics. So in this case here, we're talking about financial viability. So all those resources here are somehow related to that particular topic, and could help a user interested in learning more of what he or she could do to implement practices in order to move forward with compliance with those different indicators and requirements from the sustainability programs. So, and maybe lastly, from there, so as I mentioned, the tool is meant to be circular somehow. So it's, even though we started by looking at the self-assessment section, someone can go online, access the resource library, and at any time start or review the assessment by clicking at the top of the page here, and actually go back to the questionnaire section, and like I said, to start, resume, or view the assessment. Here it's actually review, because I've already completed this specific questionnaire. So if we go back to the home page, I will conclude with a few more features of that tool. So as you can see, so these are the main two functionalities where actually you can assess or access information on sustainability. But the tool is also meant to provide more information. First of all, about AFAC and the platform itself. So here in the About Us section, you will have access to more information of who is AFAC, what are the organizations behind this initiative. So this is and who are the supporting organizations that made that platform, that tool feasible. Also more information on the disclaimer and terms of use for anyone who is actually interested to know, like, okay, what are the conditions and how the context actually with which such platform has been designed and how it can be used. And the How It Works section also provide more context information on sustainability. So a user can access this section, learn more about economic viability, the 3 pillars that are on which supporting the overall framework of this tool. So economic viability, environmental sustainability, and social responsibility, and click and get access to some information about that and why sustainability matter, if farmers are ready. So all the background information on why this tool has been designed and why it's so important for farmers to actually look into their assets or practices and be interested in sustainability, mostly in terms of what market demands are coming from different actors of the industry. Other background information and resources, and more information in terms of methodology, so how the tool has been designed and how to understand each of those different sections. Finally, all the information you provided on your profile are always available in my account. Here, for instance, you can edit your information in terms of who you are, where you're located, your crops you're producing. You can change your password and any other information that are used to customize your questionnaire and your situation. So all these sections there, so all that to say that a user who wants to edit the profile can actually do that at any time. So in a nutshell, this is how the tool works. I have tried to look at the different functionalities and different features of this tool, and now I'll be more than happy to answer any of your questions. And I guess I see that on the GoToMeeting there are a couple of them, so I'll be happy to answer any of them at that point. So thank you.
Thank you. We have our first question here. How come the tool is tied to a person and not an entity?
So that's actually a good question. So the tool is tied to a person in terms of, because actually it's a user who is completing the questionnaire. So once you go on the login page, I'll just log out to go back to the login section. So we so we're asking, so we assume that there is one person, or actually an entity, but there is one respondent, one party, one user of the platform. The user can actually be a farm. You can actually register as a farm. But what is interesting and important to know is that those sustainability programs on which the platform the tool has been designed are actually looking at what are the practices implemented on the entity, whether it's one farm or a group of farm. So it's all about practices. So we are assuming that a user, who can be whether the owner or a representative of the entity, can register and actually answer based on the practices implemented on the farm, or on average what is actually being done on the entity, or if there's a group of farmers, what is actually being done on average. But there is the tool right now doesn't provide the opportunity to create different profiles if they are, let's say, a group of farms, or different locations for one specific entity. So it's as is a user has to answer as if there was only one entity here.
Okay. Any more questions? If you can please type them in. Oh, I think we got one here. So I guess in response to that question, Tracy here just says that the user should be answering questions based on the farm. So if we have a certain scorecard, it would be printed with the farm name and the percentage of viability, etc. So I guess what you're saying is that it doesn't come out with the farm name. It just comes out with whoever completed like it isn't tied to a particular farm. It's just a person.
But actually, that's an interesting comment. So right now, yes, the tool is personified. So we're actually welcome Jean-Michel, welcome Carla. So it's the tool has been designed for a specific user, but we can, when you log in, you can also enter the name of the farm if you prefer actually describing the answer the questionnaire on behalf of the entity itself.
Okay. I have a question, and I don't know if maybe Carla addressed this, but is this a national tool, or is it an Alberta only tool? Like you had reference to the Alberta ESP. Does that change depending on what province you're linked to?
That kind of goes into like the second phase and beyond of this project. We wanted to make it so a cropping farmer from anywhere in Canada, that it would have relevance based on these 3 international programs. But because it started in Alberta, this is where the whole process started, looking at Alberta and Canadian laws, looking at beneficial management practices that are used in Alberta. All of the resource material currently comes from Alberta agriculture and other resources. So this is something we're looking at to expand and be applicable to other crop farmers in Canada. But at this point, we had to put our stake in the sand and start with Alberta.
Okay. Another question here. How is this program compatible with the Ag Canada HOLIS program on tracking carbon footprint? Is there a link to it, or?
It's
we haven't done that. Go ahead, Jean-Michel.
Oh, sorry. No, yeah, so the HOLIS and this platform are actually looking at 2 different, let's say, have 2 different perspectives on sustainability. So HOLIS is mostly a carbon footprint or a quantitative tool to assess the footprint of an operation, whereas this tool is looking at the practices implemented on a farm and practices that are actually identified in sustainability programs for compliance. So these are, let's say, 2 perspectives on sustainability, which we find in the sustainability landscape, I would say, in Canada and elsewhere. So the practice-based and the outcome-based platforms. In this case, it's a practice-based platform. So it's fully compatible somehow because it's looking at the same topic from 2 different perspectives. But the 2 tools themselves are not connected per se.
Okay. Next question. For the farm safety portion, does it have a testing portal so we can evaluate safety programs on the farm, similar to the Safety Sync, Good Days Worked, etc.?
So, so just to make sure, I'm not sure if I can answer really specifically to that particular question, but for sure, the social. Oh, I need to log in, as you can see. So once we go on the social responsibility section on work and health and safety, so there are different topics related to that issue listed there, going from health and safety risk assessment, health and safety procedures, or different topics, again, addressed in a practice-based perspective, and also resources being listed there for people interested. So Alberta, for resources from Alberta for anyone interested from the governmental, from the different ministry in Alberta for accessing more information. So I'm not familiar enough to with that particular program to know if it's actually listed there or if it should be, but this is actually an interesting comment. So these are, if there is a way of connecting and accessing to more resources to help users to go beyond just this checklist and maybe assess the performance of their program on farm, that would be interesting to list this resource for sure.
Okay, yeah, and the comment back on that would be, it would be great to add in a testing portal for employees on that for safety. So just a suggestion, I guess. That. Next question, can you track changes over time? Like from year to year, see where you are 1 year and then do it again? Is that kind of the intent with it, to see improvements from year to year?
Not in this first phase of the platform. The reason is that the first objective is actually to increase readiness and understanding of what actually the sustainability is and what could be done on a farm to the type of practices that could be implemented to move towards what the markets or the sustainability programs are looking for. So the idea is not to have an incremental or something that could be like, let's say, year 1 and then year 2 and see improvements over the years. The idea is to go through the questionnaires and then have an action plan designed. And from there, a user can say, well, this year I'll do this, and next year I'll do the other practices. But the tool at that point for phase 1 is just to give this initial profile, but this is definitely an improvement that could be considered if there's a need for farmers to look at to identify things that could be improved over the years and see how these improvements are actually being implemented.
Okay. I don't have any more questions at this time, so if you have a question, please enter it in the chat box. I have one, maybe more about the link to those 3 platforms that you're showcasing kind of, or linking everything back to. Those 3 platforms are audited, right?
Could be. So these, I mean, they are publicly available. So there are links in the how it works sections to know, and actually we are referring to the specific version of these different programs because they are different versions out there. So so they can be used in different ways. They can be used as a self-assessment. So for instance, the FSA, Farm Sustainability Assessment from the SAI platform, is actually first and foremost a self-assessment tool. Someone or a company or a group could actually also get certified or audited under this program as well. So yes, potentially these are all auditable programs, but they can also be used as a self-assessment tool as well.
Okay. Next question. How does this tie in with the Growing Forward Environmental Farm Plan? So what's the link between this tool and the farm plan?
So the tool, as of now, is actually captured here in the resource library section, where a user can actually see if a particular indicator and related recommended beneficial management practice is actually related to the EFP. So potentially over in the following phase of the project, it could be interesting to explore the possibility of linking the 2 platforms, because there's also an online version of the Alberta EFP. So it could be interesting potentially to see how these 2 platforms could be connected with one another, so that someone who completes the EFP online on one hand can actually have the information transferred on this platform and vice versa. But these are things that are not taken into account at this point, because again, going back to the original objective of this platform, but they are already bridges, and this is one of them here. But they are definitely opportunities to strengthen this this connection.
Yeah, and the EFP2 would only cover the environment piece, not necessarily all the other 2.
And you're actually right. Yeah. So of course, in the environmental section, we'll find more of those connections. Of course, the EFP also addresses, if I'm correct, I don't want to say any, I don't want to create any confusion, but I do think that there are some work and safety and security topics, indicators covered by the EFP, but yeah, of course, the EFP is mostly related to the environmental sustainability pillar.
Yeah. And just back to the comment from Tracy about EFPs being out of date. There is now a new renewal process for EFPs, a 10-year renewal, and in the new Growing Forward program, which is known as CAP now, the Canada Agriculture Partnership, you will have to have a current EFP, which means that it will have to be, if you have one that's older than 10 years, you will have to update it to get into that program. So that's just a bit of information for everybody too on that.
But that's not for all of the the programs under CAP. It's
No.
only for a certain few under CAP. And
Right.
just another comment, linking this program back to CAP, we have talked with Alberta Agriculture about having a top-up for producers that go through this system. So we're still working on that, and that may be an option for producers that do go through this. They may be able to get some additional funding on some of their grant applications.
Thanks, Cara. Yeah, and she's right. It's just to do with the stewardship pieces. You'll need any current EFP. The next question, will the sustainability metrics that the assessment is based on acknowledge a farmer's score or readiness based on their self-audit?
I will make sure I understand your question correctly. So you ask if the original metrics here listed are taking into account the information provided by the user in the questionnaire?
I'm just trying to, what are the sustainability metrics that the assessment is based on acknowledge a farmer's score readiness based on their self-assessment? I'm not quite.
Well, what I can say is, sorry, how it works is that the original information from which we started and we developed the questionnaire and the overall content of this platform, of this tool, is actually all those requirements. So as I mentioned initially, there are over 400 metrics or requirements found in those 3 programs. So what we did is we looked at them and we tried to cluster them together, to create groups or clusters of similar topics. So as you can see here, I'm under young and vulnerable workers, and if you read through all those requirements, they are pretty similar. They are all different, and they have their own scope, their own they actually their own specific expectations or requirements, but they're still addressing a similar topic. So based on all this information, then we designed. First of all, we created an indicator, which is in this case called young and vulnerable workers, and from there we designed a BMP, we created tip and advice, and in this case, we added a regulatory reminder. This is something we haven't seen in the webinar because we didn't come across one, but here is actually a reminder that there are regulations in Alberta or at the national level addressing that specific topic. So by doing that, this is how we started. So for instance, here we have 5 requirements, and together they have been clustered into one indicator and one BMP and one question in the questionnaire. So if we look, we look at that from the different perspective. When you go in the questionnaire, there's one question addressing this specific indicator, and when you answer to that question, and then you go to in the scorecard, and the scorecard will tell you if you're likely complying with this indicator based on the answer. So this is let's say the readiness perspective. So the user would understand that this topic is relevant, is important in the sustainability context. But if a user really wants to comply with FSA or really wants to comply with ISC CC+, therefore it's important to go back to the original requirements there, because the auditor will not necessarily look at our questions or at the scorecard. They will actually go back and challenge the practices based on the specific requirements listed here. So this is why the tool provides an overview of how, let's say, the distance to target with the requirements there, because this is how they are clustered. But of course, a user to comply will have to go back to the original requirements. So I don't know if I'm answering the question by saying all that, but it's actually a top-down. It's a let's say a top-down perspective. We develop the content from a top-down perspective, but a user who really wants to move forward with certifying with those programs will need to go back to the original requirements and read through them to make sure that they actually are ready to comply if an auditor comes on their farm.
Okay, yeah, that answers your question. Yes, thank you. And that's all the questions that we have at this time. I guess the one question I had was, in terms of those 3 programs, what's the demand on from, I guess, from industry to do those? Is there a lot of uptake in those existing platforms already, or?
So when the working group originally looked at our first pilot back in 2015, these 3 programs we were selected because they were the most robust internationally, as far as if producers could comply with any one of these, then they would comply with almost any other sustainability standard program out there. ISCC is being used by ADM and Viterra that I know of now. Jean-Michel, if you can add anything to that?
Well, yeah, there are more and more. There actually an uptake on those sustainability programs, in particular with FSA and ISCC. Sorry. So ISCC, there are already several farmers complying under this particular program, mostly Canada growers for biofuels and to actually for producers involved in the biofuel value chain exporting to Europe. So they are actually several farmers complying under this particular program. And FSA, they are more and more companies right now in Canada going through asking farmers operating in their supply chain to actually comply with FSA. They have been piloted in Ontario. They are also some, I think, coming up in Saskatchewan. So yes, the companies are actually taking action on those fronts. And as for the Unilever Sustainability Program, it's maybe the most comprehensive one, really detailed. But this program is also benchmarked against FSA. So potentially, for instance, and I don't want to get too technical, but someone or Unilever themselves or any supplier in line with the Unilever's requirements may actually say that if a farmer reaches the silver score for FSA, therefore it's the equivalent to Unilever Sustainable Agricultural Code. So without getting into much details there, actually there is an alignment with all those programs at the international level, and more companies, whether in North America or in Canada itself, are actually referring to them in their sustainability sourcing programs.
Okay, thanks. We just have another comment here from one of our producers that Viterra has a sustainability standard they were asking many producers to sign up. And they felt that it left them liable, so they didn't sign it. Do you have any comments on that? From the producer perspective of feeling comfortable signing off on those standards?
Well, I'm not familiar enough with this specific Viterra standards. I'm not, so I will have to first look into it to know how they relate to those other programs we looked into here. So what I can say, actually, and I'm maybe not directly answering the question, but what I can say is that, of course, those programs, especially from international companies, or whether the program itself has been designed by an international organizations such as FSA and ISCC, are actually addressing topics that are not necessarily all relevant in a Canadian context. So in this case, young and vulnerable workers, that's a good example where in some countries this issue is actually interpreted or seen as in a different angle or lens as it is in Canada. So the same with other specific topics in terms of labor relations or working conditions. So of course, so when we look at those requirements themselves, as we read them for what they are, some of them might actually sound funny, if I may say, or maybe not relevant in the Canadian context. So this is one of the reasons why we developed this tool as well. So it's an opportunity to take those topics and to put them in context from an Alberta perspective in this case, and make sure that the tips and advice, as well as the regulatory reminders we provide, are actually contextualized and actually refer to what a farmer here in Alberta should take into consideration in their through their activities, even though the requirements themselves might actually be something that is not of a major concern in Canada in particular. So In the case of Viterra, I can't say how actually those requirements have been designed, but potentially if they are aligned with international standards, it's possible that they are addressing topics that are actually that may need to be contextualized from like to what is being done in Alberta in terms of common practices from farmers.
Okay, yeah, that's a good point. Kind of taking things globally and applying them to our specific case doesn't provide a different lens on things. So that is all we have for questions at this time. I'd like to thank you and Carla for your presentations. It was very informative and very interesting to see how far you guys have gotten on this project. At this time, we would ask that everybody, our usual audience, leave the call, and we'll leave you to work with your pilot producers on this tool. So thank you again.